A desperate warning. Captain Liam Everett wiped the sweat from his brow as he stumbled through the dense alien jungle. Every step felt like a battle against the thick vines, the towering trees, and the suffocating humidity. His ship had crash-landed 2 days ago, and his supplies were dwindling. The jungle was alive in a way he couldn't explain. Shadows seemed to move, and strange sounds echoed through the air. He knew one thing for sure. This wasn't an ordinary planet. Suddenly, a soft rustle caught his attention. Liam froze, his heart pounding. He gripped the small blade he had salvaged from his ship, his only weapon. Out of the shadows stepped a figure. It was a woman, or at least she looked like one. Her skin was a deep shade of green, marked with glowing, swirling patterns. Her eyes, golden and luminous, locked onto his with an intensity that made him uneasy. She wore something like armor made from the jungle itself, woven leaves, bark, and bones. Her movements were graceful yet sharp, like a predator sizing up its prey. "Human," she said, her voice low and musical, but there was an edge to it. "You shouldn't be here." Liam tightened his grip on his blade. "Trust me, I didn't choose this. My ship crashed. I just need to survive long enough to fix my beacon." She shook her head, her expression unreadable. "You don't understand. This jungle, it sees you. It judges you, and it doesn't want you here." "What do you mean, it sees me?" Liam asked, frowning. "It's just a jungle." "No," she said firmly. "It is alive. It has claimed many outsiders like you. If you don't listen to me, it will claim you too." Liam wanted to laugh, but something in her tone stopped him. There was no mockery, no humor, only deadly seriousness. "And how do I know you're not part of whatever this is?" he asked, narrowing his eyes. "For all I know, you could be leading me into some trap." The woman's golden eyes softened, just a little. "I could have let the jungle take you already. It doesn't need my help. But I'm here because you have one chance. A slim one." Liam's survival instincts kicked in. He wasn't a man who trusted easily, but something about her urgency made him pause. "What's this chance?" She took a step closer, her presence commanding yet oddly calming. "The jungle tests outsiders. It views them as intruders, threats. The only way to survive is to become part of it. That's why you need me." "Become part of it? What does that even mean?" Liam asked, his voice laced with frustration. The woman's gaze didn't waver. "It means bonding with me. My people once lived in harmony with the jungle. Through our rituals, we became one with it. You must do the same, or it will consume you." Liam blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. "Bond? What kind of bonding are we talking about here?" Her expression didn't change. "Our ritual is ancient. It requires a deep connection, a merging of souls. In simpler terms, we must become mates." The words hit Liam like a punch. "Mates? As in, you want me to marry you?" She tilted her head, clearly unfamiliar with the term. "If that's what you call it, then yes. But it's more than a ceremony. The jungle must recognize our bond is true. If it doesn't, it will reject you, and you will die." Liam stared at her, unsure whether to laugh or run. This was insane. He was a pilot, an explorer. He'd faced dangers before, but nothing like this. "Listen, I didn't catch your name," he said cautiously. "Nara," she replied simply. "Nara," he repeated. "I don't know what kind of game this is, but I'm not just going to jump into some alien ritual because you said so. There has to be another way." Nayara's expression hardened. "There isn't. The jungle has already marked you. Can't you feel it?" Liam frowned, and for the first time, he noticed a faint tingling in his skin, like static electricity. He had dismissed it as nerves or exhaustion, but now it felt more sinister. "Even now, it watches you," Nayara said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The vines, the shadows, the creatures, they are all part of it. You don't have long before it makes its move." Liam wanted to argue, but a low growl echoed through the trees, cutting him off. The sound wasn't like any animal he'd ever heard. Deep, guttural, and far too close. Nyara glanced over her shoulder, her body tensing. You've drawn its attention. You need to decide now. Do you trust me, or do you want to face it alone? Liam's mind raced. He didn't trust her, not completely, but he couldn't ignore the evidence piling up. The jungle was alive, and it wanted him gone. Fine, he said through gritted teeth. But if this is some kind of trick— It's not, Nyara said firmly. Follow me, and don't fall behind. The jungle doesn't like hesitation. As she turned and disappeared into the foliage, Liam hesitated for a heartbeat before following her. He didn't know if she was his savior or his doom, but one thing was certain: he was out of options. The jungle seemed to hum with anticipation, as if it knew the game had just begun. The jungle's first move. The air was heavy with silence, the kind that pressed down on Liam's chest like a weight. The rustling leaves and chirping insects had vanished, replaced by an unnatural stillness. It wasn't peaceful, it was predatory, like the jungle itself was holding its breath. Nyara moved ahead of him with fluid grace, her every step deliberate. Liam followed closely, clutching his blade, though he doubted it would do much against whatever lived here. He didn't know what was worse: the strange woman leading him into the unknown, or the living jungle she claimed wanted to kill him. What is it with this place? Liam finally asked, his voice low but sharp. Why is everything so wrong? Nyara didn't turn. The jungle tests all who enter. It's not just alive, it's sentient. It doesn't see you as prey or friend. It sees you as a challenge. A challenge. That's comforting, Liam muttered, stepping over a thick root. Without warning, Nyara stopped and held up a hand. Liam froze mid-step, his body tensing. She crouched low, her golden eyes scanning the dense foliage ahead. Liam followed her gaze but saw nothing. What is it? He whispered, barely daring to breathe. Nyara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached out to the ground, pressing her fingers against the mossy surface. When she looked up, her face was grim. It knows we're here, and it's not waiting anymore. As if on cue, the jungle came alive. Vines erupted from the ground, their movements unnervingly precise, like snakes hunting their prey. Liam barely had time to leap back as one lashed out, snapping just inches from his face. Run, Nyara shouted, grabbing his arm and pulling him into motion. They darted through the thick undergrowth, the jungle closing in around them. Vines slithered like living ropes, snapping at their ankles. Liam felt the ground shift beneath his feet, as though the earth itself was trying to trip him. Where are we even going? He yelled, dodging a thorny branch that whipped toward his head. To safety, Nyara called back, though her voice betrayed a hint of doubt. The jungle wasn't just attacking, it was adapting. A swarm of glowing insects burst from the trees, their wings humming like tiny engines. They descended in a cloud, forcing Liam to cover his face as they swarmed around him. Nyara reached into a pouch on her belt, pulling out a handful of dark powder. She threw it into the air, and the insects scattered instantly, as if repelled by an invisible barrier. What the hell was that? Liam asked, coughing as he stumbled forward. Protection, Nyara said curtly. But it won't last. Keep moving. They emerged into a small clearing, and Nyara abruptly stopped. Liam skidded to a halt beside her, panting and covered in scratches. For a moment, he thought they had found a safe haven. Then he saw it. The ground in the clearing wasn't solid. It pulsed, shifting like the surface of a breathing creature. Thick, root-like tendrils rose and fell, glowing faintly in the dim light. This isn't better, Liam shouted, backing away. Nyara stepped forward, her expression focused. Stay close to me. Don't touch the ground unless I tell you. What does that even mean? Before she could answer, the clearing shifted, The tendrils surged upward, forming a wall around them. Liam realized too late that they were trapped. The jungle wasn't just testing him, it was toying with them. "What now?" Liam demanded, his voice rising in panic. Nyara turned to him, her eyes blazing. "You have to trust me." "Trust you? This was your plan." "This is the jungle's plan," she snapped. "It's testing your worth. If we fail, it will swallow us whole." Liam stared at her, his chest heaving. He didn't want to believe her, but the ground beneath his feet was proof enough. The jungle wasn't waiting for him to decide. It was forcing his hand. Nyara took a step closer, lowering her voice. "This is only the beginning. The jungle is trying to scare you, to make you doubt yourself. If you give in, it will win. You have to fight it." "How am I supposed to fight a jungle?" Liam asked bitterly. Nyara reached out and placed a hand on his chest. "Not with your blade, with your will. It's watching us right now. Show it you're not afraid, and it will back down for now." Liam wanted to argue, but there was no time. The tendrils were closing in, tightening the circle. He took a deep breath, trying to push down the fear clawing at his mind. "I'm not afraid," he said, though his voice wavered. "Louder," Nyara urged. "I'm not afraid," he shouted, this time with more conviction. The tendrils paused, as if considering his words. The jungle seemed to hum, a low vibration that resonated through the air. Then, slowly, the tendrils receded, sinking back into the ground. Liam exhaled sharply, his legs threatening to give out. Nyara nodded, a faint smile on her lips. "Good, but it won't stop for long. Come on, we need to keep moving." As they left the clearing, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that the jungle was still watching, still waiting for its next move. Whatever game it was playing, he was now a part of it. And losing wasn't an option. The bonding ritual. The sanctuary Nyara led him to was unlike anything Liam had ever seen. It was a hollowed-out cavern, its walls alive with faintly glowing moss. Bioluminescent tendrils dangled from the ceiling, pulsing like the rhythm of a heartbeat. Small pools of shimmering liquid dotted the floor, casting eerie reflections that rippled like they held secrets of their own. "This place," Liam murmured, his voice echoing softly, "feels alive." "It is," Nyara replied, stepping further inside. Her movements were reverent, almost cautious, as if she were treading on sacred ground. "This is where my people once bonded with the jungle. It's the only place where its judgment can be tempered." Liam hesitated at the entrance, his instincts screaming at him not to go further. The air inside felt thick, charged with energy that prickled his skin. "Why do I feel like walking in here is a bad idea?" Nyara turned to him, her golden eyes glowing softly in the dim light. "Because it is. The sanctuary doesn't welcome intruders, but if we perform the ritual, it will accept you, if you're worthy." He scoffed, masking his growing unease. "Worthy? What does that even mean? I didn't sign up to be judged by some overgrown forest." Nyara's gaze hardened. "The jungle doesn't care what you signed up for. It sees you as an invader. The ritual is the only chance you have to survive." Liam took a deep breath and stepped inside, the cavern's warmth enveloping him like a living thing. "All right, fine. Let's get this over with. What's the ritual? A chant? A dance? Please tell me it doesn't involve blood." Nyara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she knelt by one of the glowing pools, dipping her fingers into the shimmering liquid. She began to hum, a low, haunting melody that reverberated through the cavern. The tendrils hanging from the ceiling responded, their pulses quickening in time with her song. Liam shifted uncomfortably. "Okay, that's not creepy at all." Nyara stood and faced him, her expression solemn. "The ritual requires a bond, something the jungle cannot break. It isn't just about survival, Liam. It's about connection. Trust." "Trust," Liam repeated, folding his arms. "Right. You keep saying that, But let's be real. You're asking me to bond with you without telling me what that actually means. Nayara stepped closer, her presence commanding. It means merging our life forces. The jungle will sense it. It will know we are one. That sounds permanent, Liam said, his voice tight. It is, Nayara replied simply. Liam's throat tightened. He wasn't just agreeing to some temporary truce with the jungle. This was a life-altering decision. The weight of it pressed down on him, making the air feel even thicker. What happens if it doesn't work? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Nayara's expression darkened. If the jungle rejects you, it will claim you. Body and soul. Liam swallowed hard, the implications hitting him like a punch. Great. No pressure. Nayara extended her hand, her glowing patterns brightening as she did. Trust me, Liam. It's the only way. He stared at her hand, his mind racing. Trust wasn't exactly his strong suit, especially not with someone, or something, he barely knew. But the jungle had already proven it wasn't something he could fight. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about survival. Reluctantly, he took her hand. Her skin was warm, almost too warm, and the glow from her patterns spread to him, crawling up his arm like tiny sparks. Nayara began to chant again, her voice weaving through the air like a thread, binding them together. The cavern responded, the glowing moss and pools brightening until the entire space felt like it was breathing. Liam's chest tightened as a strange sensation washed over him. It wasn't pain. It was like a current of energy flowing through him, connecting him to Nayara, to the sanctuary, to the jungle itself. His mind filled with flashes of images he didn't understand. Towering trees, endless roots, glowing eyes watching from the shadows. What's happening? He managed to choke out. The jungle is watching, Nayara said, her voice steady despite the intensity of the moment. It's deciding if you're worthy. The energy surged, and Liam's vision blurred. He felt exposed, vulnerable, as if every secret, every fear he'd ever had was being laid bare. The jungle wasn't just watching, it was judging. And then, as suddenly as it began, the energy subsided. Liam collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. Nayara knelt beside him, her glowing patterns dimming slightly. It's done, she said softly. Liam looked up at her, his body trembling. What did it decide? Nayara's lips curved into a faint smile. For now, you're still alive. That's a good sign. He groaned, pushing himself to his feet. For now, that's not exactly reassuring. The jungle's tests aren't over, Nayara said, her tone serious. It will come for us again. But you've taken the first step. You're stronger now. Connected. Liam didn't feel stronger. He felt drained, like he'd just run a marathon through a nightmare. But as he looked around the sanctuary, he realized something had changed. The cavern no longer felt hostile. The air was lighter, the glow warmer. Maybe, just maybe, Nayara was right. But as they left the sanctuary and stepped back into the jungle, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that the real test was still waiting for him in the shadows. The jungle tightens its grip. The air outside the sanctuary was different now, thicker, heavier, and charged with tension. The jungle seemed angrier, as though it had felt the bonding ritual and saw it as a challenge. Liam couldn't shake the sensation of being watched, not by one pair of eyes but by thousands. We need to move, Nayara said sharply, her golden eyes scanning the shifting foliage. The jungle knows what we did. It won't let us go so easily now. Liam tightened his grip on the makeshift blade he carried. What's it going to do? Throw more vines at us? Because, let me tell you, I'm getting really tired of those. Nayara didn't smile. It's more than vines. The jungle has creatures, predators born from its will. They'll come for us now. They don't stop, and they don't fear. As if on cue, a distant roar echoed through the trees, low and guttural. It wasn't like any animal Liam had ever heard. The sound carried with it a strange vibration that made his chest tighten and his hands sweat. "What the hell was that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Nyara's expression darkened. "A hunter. The jungle's way of ensuring its will is carried out." "Great, so now it's sending hitmen after us," Liam muttered, but his sarcasm felt hollow against the mounting dread. "Stay close," Nyara said, stepping forward with purpose. "The jungle is shifting its ground. It will try to separate us." Liam followed her, his eyes darting around for any signs of movement. The trees seemed to close in, their branches twisting together to form an almost impenetrable wall. The ground beneath their feet felt unsteady, as if the jungle itself was breathing. They hadn't gone far when the first attack came. A shadow darted across their path, fast and silent. Liam barely had time to react before something massive lunged at them from the trees. It was a creature unlike anything he'd ever seen, part reptile, part plant, its body covered in bark-like scales and glowing green veins. Its eyes burned with a malevolent intelligence, and its jagged teeth dripped with a viscous, black sap. Liam raised his blade instinctively, but the creature swiped at him with a clawed limb, knocking him off balance. He hit the ground hard. The wind knocked out of him. "Liam!" Nyara's voice cut through the chaos. She sprang into action, drawing a curved blade from her side and slashing at the creature with precision. Her strikes were fluid and deadly, and the creature recoiled, hissing in pain. "Get up," she shouted, her voice snapping him back to reality. Liam scrambled to his feet, his heart racing. The creature wasn't done. It circled them, its movements deliberate, as if it were studying their weaknesses. "What the hell is that thing?" Liam demanded, his voice shaking. "A stalker," Nyara replied, her eyes never leaving the creature. "The jungle's enforcers. They hunt anything it deems unworthy." "Well, it's doing a great job of making me feel unworthy," Liam shot back. The stalker lunged again, and this time Nyara shouted something in her native tongue. The glowing patterns on her skin flared to life, and Liam felt a strange energy ripple through the air. The stalker hesitated, its glowing eyes narrowing as if it recognized the power she was wielding. "Now, Liam," Nyara yelled. "Strike it while it's distracted." Adrenaline surged through him as he charged forward, his blade aimed at the creature's exposed side. With a desperate cry, he plunged the weapon into its glowing veins. The stalker let out an unearthly screech, thrashing wildly as black sap sprayed from the wound. Liam stumbled back, panting, as the creature collapsed in a heap. For a moment, the jungle was silent again, but the victory felt hollow. Nyara grabbed his arm, pulling him away from the fallen stalker. "We can't stay here. More will come. More." Liam groaned, his muscles already screaming in protest. "The jungle doesn't stop," she said, her voice grim. "It doesn't forgive. The closer we get to freedom, the harder it will fight to keep us." As they moved deeper into the jungle, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that the stalker's eyes were still watching him, even in death. The jungle wasn't just trying to kill them. It was testing them, pushing them to their limits. "Why does it care so much?" Liam asked, his frustration boiling over. "Why not just let me leave?" "Because you're an outsider," Nyara said simply. "The jungle sees you as a threat to its balance. It doesn't trust you." "And you?" Liam asked, glancing at her. "Does it trust you?" Nyara hesitated, her expression unreadable. "It tolerates me. For now." Liam didn't like the sound of that, but there was no time to press her further. The jungle was alive with movement again, and the distant roars were growing louder. Whatever was coming next, Liam knew one thing for sure. The jungle wasn't done with them yet. A dangerous union. The jungle's heartbeat seemed to echo in Liam's chest, louder and faster as the seconds ticked by. They had barely escaped the last attack, but the jungle wasn't finished. It never was. Nyara led him to a clearing surrounded by ancient, spiraling trees that glowed faintly their trunks etched with the same swirling patterns that covered her skin. The air felt dense, vibrating with an energy Liam couldn't see but could feel in every cell of his body. "This is it," Nayara said, her voice steady but low. "The place where the final part of the bond must be completed." Liam eyed the clearing skeptically, his instincts screaming that this wasn't a safe space. "You keep saying bond like it's some magic fix, but so far, all it's done is make the jungle even angrier." Nayara turned to face him, her glowing eyes narrowing. "The jungle reacts because it senses hesitation. If we fail to complete the bond, it will see us as imposters. You think it's angry now? That's nothing compared to what happens if it rejects us." Liam felt a chill crawl up his spine. Rejection. Right. Love the sound of that. Nayara ignored his sarcasm and stepped into the center of the clearing. She knelt on the ground, placing her hands on the glowing roots that snaked across the soil. The patterns on her skin flared brighter, casting an eerie light that made the shadows dance. "You need to trust me, Liam," she said, her voice softer now. "This isn't just about survival. The bond will tie us together, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually. The jungle must feel that connection. Only then will it see you as part of this world." "And if it doesn't?" Liam asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then it will consume us both," she said without hesitation. Liam swallowed hard, his throat dry. "No pressure, huh?" Nayara stood and faced him, holding out her hand. "We have to begin. The jungle won't wait much longer." He hesitated, his eyes flicking to the edges of the clearing. The trees seemed to be leaning inward, their glowing branches twisting and curling as if they were watching, waiting. "All right," he said finally, taking her hand. "Let's do this before I lose my nerve." Nayara nodded and guided him to kneel across from her. She began to chant in her native tongue, her words melodic and strange, weaving through the air like a song carried on the wind. The ground beneath them seemed to hum in response, the glowing roots pulsing in time with her voice. Liam felt a strange warmth spread through him, starting where their hands touched and coursing through his entire body. It wasn't painful, but it wasn't comfortable either. It was like being plugged into a live wire. "What's happening?" he asked, his voice tight. "The bond is forming," Nayara said, her eyes glowing brighter now. "You'll feel everything. Don't fight it. Feel everything." "What does that even mean?" Liam's words caught in his throat as a flood of sensations washed over him. He saw flashes of Nayara's memories. Her people, once thriving and strong, now reduced to whispers in the jungle. He felt her pain, her determination, her fear of being the last of her kind. And then he felt the jungle itself, a vast, ancient consciousness, its emotions alien and incomprehensible, but undeniably alive. It was too much. Liam gasped, his vision blurring as the energy surged. His body felt like it was being pulled in every direction at once, stretched thin and reassembled all at the same time. "I can't," he started, but Nayara gripped his hands tighter. "You can," she said firmly. "Focus on me. The bond is almost complete." Liam forced himself to breathe, to focus on Nayara's glowing eyes and the steady rhythm of her voice. Slowly, the chaos in his mind began to settle, the flood of sensations blending into something coherent. The jungle's presence shifted. It was no longer pressing down on him like a predator stalking its prey. Instead, it felt curious, watching, but not hostile. "It's working," Nayara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The jungle is beginning to accept you." Liam wanted to feel relief, but the energy between them was still building, reaching a peak that felt like it might tear them apart. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the energy dissipated. The glow of the roots faded to a soft shimmer, and the air grew still. Liam collapsed onto his back, gasping for breath. That was insane. Nayara knelt beside him, her glowing patterns dim but steady. "You did it. The bond is complete." Liam sat up slowly, his body aching but intact. He looked at his hands, half expecting them to glow like hers, but they were the same as ever. "I don't feel any different." "You are," Naira said. "The jungle feels it too. It won't see you as an intruder anymore. But that doesn't mean it won't test you." "Test me?" Liam groaned. "I thought this was the test." Naira stood, offering him her hand. "The jungle is always watching, Liam. Surviving here isn't about passing one trial. It's about proving yourself every day. Come, we're not safe yet." As they left the clearing, Liam couldn't help but glance back at the glowing trees. The jungle may have accepted him for now, but he knew it wasn't done with him. Whatever came next, he would face it as something new, something tied to this alien world in ways he was only beginning to understand. A new power. The jungle's pulse had changed since the ritual. The oppressive weight that had once threatened to crush Liam now felt like a strange, alive presence, a watchful companion rather than a lurking predator. It no longer seemed to press down on him with hostility, but with something else. Curiosity. As though the jungle was testing the very nature of the bond that had been forged. But that didn't mean it was done with him. "Stay alert," Naira warned as they made their way through the thick underbrush. Her eyes scanned every corner of the forest, her movements silent but purposeful. The jungle may not attack immediately, but it will always be ready to strike when we least expect it. Liam nodded, his hand instinctively brushing against the hilt of his blade. His body had recovered from the draining ritual, but there was a strange feeling coursing through him, a buzzing under his skin, like something ancient and powerful had awoken within him. He felt connected to the jungle now, not just by the bond with Naira, but by something deeper, more primal. "What is it?" he asked, his voice low as he turned to Naira. "I feel different." She stopped, turning to face him. Her gaze softened, as though she could sense the change within him, even if he couldn't fully understand it himself. "You are connected," she said simply. "The jungle's energy flows through you now. It recognizes you, but you also must learn to recognize it. You've gained its awareness. Liam, your senses are sharper, your reflexes faster." Liam flexed his hands, feeling the hum of energy vibrating in his fingertips. "Is this what you meant by the bond? I can feel it. The trees, the ground. It's like the jungle is alive inside me." "It is," Naira said, her voice filled with a quiet reverence. "The bond allows you to feel the pulse of the jungle, its thoughts, its will. But it also means you have to learn to control it." Liam frowned, flexing his fingers again as the energy thrummed beneath his skin. "Control it? I don't even know how I'm doing it." Naira gave him a look that was part understanding, part caution. "You can't let the jungle's power overwhelm you. If you give in to it completely, it will consume you. The jungle doesn't just give, it demands. It will take from you what it needs." "Great," Liam muttered. "I'm already tied to a jungle that wants to eat me. Now I've got its power running through my veins too. This just keeps getting better." But even as he spoke, he knew there was something undeniably exhilarating about it. The jungle had accepted him, and in return, he had gained a part of it. He could hear the subtle rustle of the leaves, the whispers of the wind through the trees. He could feel the pull of the ground beneath his feet, like it was trying to communicate with him. Naira looked at him, her gaze sharper now. "Focus, Liam. Trust yourself. The jungle will test you, but you must learn to listen to it. Its creatures, its traps, they won't just attack you with physical force. It will try to deceive you, to make you doubt your bond." "Deceive me?" Liam asked, raising an eyebrow. Before she could answer, a low growl rumbled through the air, chilling the air around them. It was coming from the direction they had just traveled, but there was something off about the sound. Too many voices, too deep, too guttural to be one creature. Liam tensed, his newfound senses sharp enough to catch every movement in the jungle around him. The trees shifted, the shadows deepened, and he felt the weight of countless eyes on him, waiting for a signal. "Get ready," Nyara whispered, her hand instinctively reaching for her weapon. "It's coming." Liam's heart raced as the growl grew louder, almost deafening. His body stiffened, but this time, something inside him clicked. He could feel the jungle, the creatures, the movements, the subtle shifts in the environment that hinted at danger. It wasn't just survival anymore. He wasn't just running from the jungle's will. He was the jungle. He extended his senses, letting them spread out like ripples in the water. The creatures hiding in the shadows were no longer hidden. They were illuminated in his mind's eye. He could sense their movements, their intentions, even their emotions. Fear, hunger, anger. They were close, and they were coming fast. Liam turned to Nyara. "I can feel them. There's a group of them up ahead. We need to move. Now." Without hesitation, Nyara grabbed his arm, her grip strong and steady. "Show me what you can do, Liam. Use it." The jungle pulsed with his command. For the first time, he understood it completely. He felt the trees bending to his will, the ground beneath him shifting in response to his command. A thick vine burst from the ground, coiling into a rope-like formation, and he lashed it toward the incoming creatures. The vine whipped through the air, slamming into a towering form hidden in the shadows. A creature, massive and terrifying, with long limbs and glowing eyes, was thrown to the ground with a screech. It tried to stand but found itself trapped by the very jungle it had stalked. Liam took a deep breath, his body trembling with the effort. The jungle wasn't just a passive force, it was part of him now. He had learned to listen to it, to command it, and it had answered. "Nice work," Nyara said, her voice impressed but cautious. "But don't get cocky. The jungle doesn't do favors." Liam nodded, wiping the sweat from his brow. "I know, but for the first time since I crashed here, I feel like I'm not just surviving. I'm in control." The jungle around them was eerily quiet again, the tension hanging thick in the air. But Liam felt the pulse of it, deep and steady. He wasn't just a stranger to this world anymore. He was a part of it, whether he wanted to be or not. And the jungle was waiting for him to prove he was worthy of its power. Escape or embrace. The jungle's vast, labyrinthine heart pulsed with a strange rhythm, like a final warning, as Liam and Nyara navigated through the dense underbrush. The air was thick with a growing tension, and though Liam's senses were sharp, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was closing in on them. The jungle, his jungle, was watching, waiting for him to make his next move. They had come so far, yet every step forward felt like a trap closing tighter around them. There was no safe place in this world, only moments of brief respite before the jungle struck again. "Where are we going?" Liam asked, his voice hoarse. "I thought the ritual was supposed to make this easier. Shouldn't we be heading toward the edge of the jungle by now?" Nyara didn't answer immediately. She moved with purpose, her steps sure and measured despite the tension in the air. Her glowing patterns flickered and dimmed as they moved deeper into the heart of the jungle, the landscape now twisted and alien, like something out of a dream. "We are," Nyara replied quietly. "But the edge is not just a place, Liam. It's a state of being. The jungle tests you until you are no longer an outsider. Until you embrace it, become part of it. Only then will you truly escape." Liam's stomach twisted with unease. "Become part of it," he echoed. "You mean, I'm stuck here for good?" Her eyes met his, her expression solemn. "You already are. The jungle's bond is not one of choice. It chooses you as much as you choose it. And now, there's no turning back." The weight of her words sank in, leaving a bitter taste in Liam's mouth. He wasn't just an intruder anymore. He was a part of this world. But was that truly his fate? To be bound to a jungle that had nearly killed him at every turn. A jungle that saw him as both prey and protector. A sudden growl shattered his thoughts, low and guttural, echoing through the trees. Something was coming, closer now. Liam's pulse quickened. What the hell is that? Nyara's expression remained unreadable, but there was something fierce in her eyes, something that told him she had known this moment would come. The final test. Before Liam could react, the jungle shifted. The ground trembled beneath his feet as the trees seemed to sway with purpose. A massive shape emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing like molten gold, its massive body hulking and terrifying. It was no creature Liam had seen before, part beast, part plant, its skin covered in bark-like armor, its teeth jagged and dripping with black sap. The creature stood nearly twice his height, towering over him like a judge preparing to pass sentence. Liam's heart pounded in his chest. What is that thing? That, Nyara said, her voice unwavering, is the heart of the jungle's power, the spirit that controls it all. It is the one who decides whether you are worthy of survival or if you are to become one with the jungle forever. Liam's breath caught in his throat. The creature's gaze locked onto him, and for a moment he could feel its presence inside his mind, pushing against the bond he had formed. It was testing him, challenging him to prove his worth. Is this it? Liam asked, his voice thick with disbelief. This is the end. The jungle sends its monster after me, and I either win or die. Nyara nodded. Yes, this is the final trial. The jungle will decide if you are to stay in its embrace or be cast into oblivion. The creature took a step forward, its massive claws scraping against the earth, sending vibrations through the air. It was ready to strike. Liam didn't move. He didn't know what to do. He had fought against the jungle's will before, but now, with the bond fully in place, there was no fighting it. He was part of it. The jungle had chosen him, and this creature, the spirit of the jungle, was its final judgment. Something shifted in him then. A realization, a sense of understanding that transcended fear. The jungle wasn't just a force to be feared. It was alive, like a vast organism, and he was part of it now. He could feel its pulse, its rhythms, its intentions. He wasn't just trapped inside it, he was its extension. Liam took a deep breath and stepped forward, his movements slow but certain. He extended his senses, reaching out through the bond, letting the jungle flow through him. He could feel the creature, its primal power, its deep hunger, but he also felt its hesitation, its uncertainty. You don't have to fight me, Liam whispered, his voice firm, yet calm. I am part of this world now. I understand you. The creature hesitated. For the first time, it didn't advance. Instead, it lowered its massive head, studying Liam with an intensity that shook him to his core. The jungle itself seemed to pause, the weight of its presence heavy in the air. Then, in a moment of impossible clarity, the creature stepped aside, its glowing eyes dimming. Liam exhaled slowly, his body sagging with relief. He had passed the final test, but it hadn't been a battle of strength or survival. It had been a test of understanding, of accepting the jungle as part of him, not as something to fight against, but as something to embrace. Nyara stood beside him, watching the creature retreat into the shadows. You did it. You've truly become part of the jungle. Liam looked back at her, a strange peace settling in his chest. I don't know if I'm ready for this life. You will be, Nyara said, her voice gentle. In time, you'll learn that survival here is not about resisting the jungle. It's about living with it, becoming one with it. Liam glanced around at the jungle that had once seemed like a prison. Now, it felt different, less like a threat and more like a home. His home. But as he looked toward the horizon, he realized there was no easy escape. He had embraced this world, and it had accepted him in return. He was no longer just a survivor. He was something else entirely, a part of the jungle, forever.